Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Sharon Vornholt, and I'm so happy you're tuning in today. I have gotten the same question from a number of people recently who want to know what it takes to become a full-time real estate investor. So they want to transition from part-time investing to full-time. And I can't think of someone better to talk about this than my guest today, Chris Prefontaine. Chris has been in real estate for over 30 years. He's a three-time best-selling author, and he has a wide range of experience that includes everything from new construction to both residential and commercial real estate. His business currently purchases 2 to 5 business a month, and that's in his buying and his selling business. And he's also a coach. He's the host of the popular podcast, the Smart Real Estate Coach podcast. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Sharon, thank you. And thank you for having me.
Let's start out by having you tell everybody a little bit more about yourself, since I just kind of hit the high spots there.
No, I appreciate that. So I operate a buying and selling business, as you just alluded to, with my son, Nick, and my son-in-law, Zach, and a great team. But we started as a family core business, and that operates in New England. So primarily Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. And when I say our own business, so we're doing exactly what we teach around the country every single week on our own business. And we buy properties only creatively. So we call it buying on terms, but it's creative real estate. No banks, no loans, no signing personally. And then we simply take that exact model and we teach it to students around the country. We don't just teach it, we get in the trenches and do deals with them. I think there's a big gap in the real estate industry of actually getting it done versus taking a course and it all sounds good and fluffy, but then you go in the real world. So that's why we're so interactive with our students. So that's kind of bringing it right up to date. And it was all built after the crash. That's yes, I've been at this 30 years, but I've been doing creative since the crash. And it's simply because I got beat up and I didn't want to go back to taking out bank debt and exposing myself again. So we might dive into some of that today. We'll have some fun.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk about terms deals because like a lot of us who remember 2008, we got beaten up in different ways, and it made us think a lot about our business and our business structure. So that was such a smart thing. You basically rebuilt the way you did business then.
Totally re-engineered. I will tell you that mentally, I was so spent, financially, yes, but also mentally that I almost didn't get back in the business. My wife kept prodding me to get back in, and it took me from, I remember like it was yesterday, February of 08 till February of 12 to literally dig out and clean up the mess and then say, I can do this.
Yeah, I know that too. It messes with your mindset. And I had a similar experience with, I just didn't want to go back down the rental property hole for a while. It leaves, I don't know, you just feel burned after that process. So when we talk about building a business, there is a part that should be laying the groundwork to go to full-time real estate. You can't just quit your job and say, okay, here I go. There are a lot of pieces of this equation. So let's talk a little bit about the things that people should do with financial decisions, with their own money, their own positioning, so to speak, before they ever make that big change.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you, probably won't be by priority order, but let me give you some high points, and then you and I can kind of rip it apart a little bit. I think if I just go back to how I've always transitioned, whether it was this crash transition or other transitions, it was starting with my personal appetite for how quickly I could do full time, meaning how much money do I need put aside? And I say that because some students tell me, well, they all say something different, but some say, I need a year reserve. I need 6-month reserve. I don't need a reserve. I have a reserve, but I need cash flow in the future. Like everyone has a different plan. So whatever it might be for you, work that out with someone who can walk you through what that path might look like. So when I say someone, whatever niche in real estate you're in, doesn't have to be mine, doesn't have to be Sharon, doesn't matter. Find someone in the niche that you can trust, that you can get behind morally and ethically, and that has weathered a bunch of storms like Sharon and I, and then say, hey, here's my plan. Now give me the metrics that'll get me there. When they give you the metrics that'll get you there, you know, the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, you'll either say, it's a little aggressive for my schedule, or nope, I can handle that, or let's get more aggressive. And all the answers are fine as long as there's a predictable plan. And then I think it's important, super important, to give them permission to hold you accountable, or someone permission to hold you accountable to what you just set up. And if you do that, I hate to water it down, but if you do that, it's pretty hard to fail. So you got someone watching you, you got someone to structure a plan, you get someone holding you accountable. It's hard to fail. And so that would be first and foremost. And then you mentioned financial. I think that's huge. Aside from the reserve thing that I brought up, I like teaching people to set up business credit and things like that, so that when you do make a full-time move, it's a very smooth, very lucrative, very fun transition versus just kind of shoestringing it. Does that make sense?
Yes, completely, because you and I both know that once you quit your W-2 job, it's really hard to get a mortgage when you're a brand new real estate investor, to get a loan of any kind, to get
Couple of
business
years,
lines of
yeah.
credit. Yeah, it takes a long time. And even then, you can only get it if you're doing well. And you and I both know a lot of people struggle along the first few years. So I like to think of getting your ducks in the row. I like that you said you need a plan, but you also need someone to hold you accountable. I mean, I've had many coaches. I'm sure you've had many coaches. We are coaches, but it's the accountability piece that seems to fall by the wayside, I think.
Yeah, I think from in hindsight now that some coaches are afraid to hold people accountable, afraid to openly communicate. Now I'm from New England, so that's not hard for us to be blunt. It's just the way we are. But we do ask permission, right? Because some students communicate different ways, and some will say, well, yeah, but don't cross this line. Like, they'll tell me what is okay and what's not okay, and that's great. I will say for the listeners and or the viewers, the mortgage thing, this is what drove me to get in the business, Sharon. My wife said to me, my credit got beat up, all the things that happened to people in the crash, or can happen, sorry. And my wife said, why don't you teach people how you came out of it? Like, I had to rebuild credit, I had to negotiate with vendors, I had to negotiate with all of the stuff that we teach. And so I think it's important for you to know, you can learn how to not ever go get a mortgage. You can learn that. That's what we teach. Except for my personal residence, out of all the real estate we control, over 85 million, we're not on one single loan, and I won't be. But I always use that exception for personal residence because it might be neighborhoods you need or want, and I understand that. But just know that you can do that without the banks.
Right. And it's once you learn how to start doing that, you won't want to go to a bank. Only is the last resort. Another thing too, I think is important when somebody is transitioning, they need to match their investing strategies, their choices with their strengths and weaknesses, but also they need to choose strategies to serve their long-term goals. If you've got no money and you want to be a rehabber and you've got no strengths in that arena, it's probably not the smartest place to start, for instance.
Yeah, agreed. I love your comments, and you can tell you and I have been at it for a little bit. So yes, strengths, weaknesses, but also I always use the phrase morally and ethically. And here's why I say that.
Yes.
There are plenty of mentors, Sharon, like us, that some people can relate to me and some can't. I get that. But morally and ethically, there's never a gray area once they understand what our community is about. So when I go to pick a mentor, I want to make sure that they might be able to help me with the strengths and weakness balance. I also want to make sure that I can get behind what they've created. So example, without using names, I had a mentor at one point that I saw what he went through with literally destroying his family. And I said, that's not a path. Like, okay, he was hugely successful, but it was a mess behind him. That's not a path I want to be in. And if someone did that, they don't know how to not do that. So just be very careful with the niche and the person within the niche, and then the experience within the niche, so that they've gone through a bunch of storms. I don't know if you agree with that, but.
No, I 100%. I think you can morally and ethically, you have to be on the same page. You have to think alike. You have to have that line in the sand that you don't cross. I have a line in the sand, and I've had students that I've had to say, look, we're not a fit. You think you can skirt around Dodd-Frank or whatever it was and do
Right.
this. You got a mentor over here saying you won't get caught. No, that's not what I do. So you should go over there and work with that person, because for me, that your reputation is everything, and it's hard to get it back once you've done something to damage it.
Yeah, so this is interesting. So we do the same. We have a set of values for the company. We openly share them at the events, on podcasts, and literally once or twice a year, we have to ask someone to leave the community. Now, a lot of mentors, as you know, would never say no to a student or ask a student to leave. We literally say no to students and ask students to leave. And sadly, over this past weekend, there was a major event like that, and we had to ask a couple to leave the community. And it's sad, but it's to protect the community and to protect the values, and it's very important.
And it protects the integrity of everything around your group, your coaching, your podcast, everything.
Right.
So I did want to talk about, I'm excited to talk about terms deals, about funding your deals. You can always go the route, and a lot of people will go the route of private money, different things, commercial bank loans or whatever. But if you can learn to do terms deals and then try to see if you can do that most, if not all of the time, I don't think newer investors, and certainly people maybe that have been in the part-time world and want to transition to full-time, they don't really grasp what a game changer that is, and they don't understand exactly what are terms deals. So I'm going to let you just take off with that one.
I'll give a high point, then you can let me know if you want to peel back the onion a little bit. So in no particular priority order, because in every market, the three ways I buy or we buy are going to change priority depending on the market condition. But we love a sub niche of owner financing, which is we seek out free and clear owners, free and clear properties. And about a third of the properties in the United States are free and clear. A mortgage broker in Florida told me recently where she is, it's like 52%, no mortgage.
Wow.
So a lot of them are off market. A lot of them obviously did some good things financially. So they're open to setting up terms, meaning they become the bank. In case you're brand new to this creative real estate space, you make payments directly to them. Why do we like free and clear? We like it because of the makeup of the seller, our avatar being strong financially, not needing to sell. We also like it because we usually, I'm talking like 98% of the time, can structure principal only payments to that seller as long as we get them to their price. Think about principal only payments. If you're listening to this, crazy compared to a conventional mortgage. You really hit principal down heavy and fast, and that's a nice recession hedge or market hedge. So that's one way, owner financing. Second is lease purchase. In all states but Texas, we do what's considered to be a sandwich lease, where I control the property and I do have my name goes on title as an equitable interest, and then I on the other side find a buyer who needs help right now, maybe because rates just went up crazy, which they did, or maybe because they got hurt by COVID for whatever reason. They may have a credit repair or down payment, lacking a down payment issue. We help them get mortgage ready and they eventually cash the home out, lease purchase or sandwich lease. And the third way is subject to. Subject to can be a deep conversation, is a confusing one for some, but subject to just means that I buy the property subject to the existing mortgage staying in place and in the seller's name, even though I own the property. We make payments on behalf of them. So those are the three ways we buy. None of those require a bank, as Sharon alluded to. And let me tell you, when I put my head on the pillow at night, Sharon, compared to 05, 6, 7, and 8, and 9 and 10, it's a different night compared to worrying about what the banks are going to do tomorrow.
Exactly, because that was a really big unknown at that time. I knew investors that had no delinquent properties, but the bank decided they were upside down as far as their mix of properties, and they called their loans. It was a terrible, terrible time for people that weren't around then. So your number one is owner finance then. That's your number one choice.
I like it because of the makeup of the avatar. I also like it because of obviously the profit potential. We create what we call 3 paydays, Sharon, per deal, 3, because all the years in real estate, I'm used to either doing a flip or, you know, a one big check. It's okay. But now that we've created 3 and we've trademarked it, when you look at the 3 paydays on an owner financing deal, they range upwards of 6 figures on one house. So you don't need 5 of these a month, right? You know, most people need a few a year. That's why I like them so much.
Now, let's talk about the 3 paydays.
Sure. So when I came out of you said earlier, wow, you restructured everything. So when I came out and I said, wow, what are the rules? Well, how are we going to operate? What's the box look like of rules and protocol? One of them was, let's not get paid just once, because then I felt like I was on a treadmill every year, even though I get paid well. You do a condo conversion or a flip and you make good money. Okay. But the 3 paydays, when we install a buyer in one of our homes who needs time to get mortgage ready, which in my opinion, side note, is a very healthy relationship, we collect a non-refundable down payment. That's payday number 1. Remember, these are buyers, not renters that maybe have a wish to buy. They're buyers. They just can't get mortgage yet. Second payday is the difference between what I'm paying my seller or their bank and what I'm collecting from my buyer, there's a small spread. It's 300 to 1,000 on average for us per house per month. And then payday 3 is a nice one because payday 3 is bigger. Payday 3 is when you cash out, you're realizing all of the principal pay down throughout that term. The seller's not and the buyer's not. You are realizing that as the investor, and any markup in price that you originally put on the property. So that's payday 3. And those 3 for us as a family team average around 75 grand. But our student all over the country, east to west coast, range from like 50,000 to 250. We're kind of on the lower end just because of our price range. But those are the 3 paydays. And if you think about, I'll wrap it up with this, Sharon. If you think about the nature of them, any business owner would love them because it's pay now, pay continuous monthly, and pay down long term. Well, that's sort of an ideal model, I would think, for any business.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I wanted to circle back too, because like you, I think people understand owner financing. It's basically a conversation where, as you said, they're much more motivated. If they can get their price, they're willing to do no interest or next to no interest. So that's something people can understand. I don't think they are as understanding of sandwich lease options and sub-2 deals. So let's talk about those a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, by the way. And I'll make a quick comment. There's all kinds of, like, I call them hybrid strategies here too, just for in case anyone's more advanced. But if you're not, just know there's potential. And that is, I might take a property on a sandwich lease and I might convert it to one of the other methods. So just to get you thinking a little bit. So do you want to unpack a little bit those other 2?
Yes, let's do.
Okay. So let's do an exact example. Let's say there's all different scenarios where, let's say Sharon was my seller. She may have equity. She may have no equity. She may be negative. But let's say that Sharon's house is worth 300. And as a seller, her and I agree on that. We say, yeah, okay, but it didn't sell in the open market for whatever reason. And she owes 250. Let's just create some simple numbers here. On a sandwich lease, I might say to Sharon, hey, Sharon, I know the market didn't get you that 300. I'm willing to give you the equity that you had in that property, or that you thought you had, it didn't sell yet, of 50,000. And I'm willing to do it like this. It's going to be a lease purchase contract. At the end of that contract, or before, let's just call it 3 years for this discussion, I'm going to pay you your 50,000, and I'm going to pay off the remaining balance on the 250 mortgage, which will be less by then. So that's how we create more spread there. And what does Sharon do? Sharon signs the lease purchase contract and then sits tight. No responsibility for maintenance, repairs, etc. We have all that responsibility, but by way of our contract, we pass that on to our buyer, who's now in the home, treating the home as if they were a buyer. They don't call us if there's a leaky toilet, because they wouldn't call the bank if they owned it. So they're treated like a buyer, and we educate them on that. And then we put them through, not us, third-party vendors who will consult them on front end and back end FICO scores, for example, regular underwriting, and credit repair if they need it, or seasoning for a new job if they need it, to your earlier point in the show. All of that takes place with a very specific mortgage ready plan to cash that property out. And when they get their conventional loan, I get cashed out, the seller gets cashed out, and the mortgage gets paid off. Now, I will point out this, because we exit all our properties that way until we get more advanced deals. What I'll say is, if you go on to YouTube, anywhere online, free info, you will hear a lot of mentors, I'm sure Sharon's aware of them, who will say, well, you could put a rent-to-own buyer in, don't qualify them. If they don't get their mortgage, you just put another one in. Legally, they may get away with it. But I think morally and ethically, back to that comment I made earlier, it's awful. We are setting buyers up to win and to get to the finish line, and they do not get accepted to the home until and unless they're qualified. That's super important. So we have a failure rate of about 2%, maybe sometimes a touch higher because of COVID or some life events. And why do we have failure rates with that cash out, even though I just said that we qualify them? Because life does happen. Death, divorce, we've seen it literally all. So very low failure rate. Most of the mentors and teachers out there are inverse relationship. They fail on most of them on purpose and keep putting new buyers in their homes. It's just, I don't like it. So that's a sandwich lease. Did you want me to stop with that and peel it back?
Well, I just wanted to point out one thing. So the people have to be okay with, they get what they want later. That's the key here. Yeah, they're going to get what they want, but they're not going to get it today. Yeah,
very good point. I didn't bring up. So thank you. So the conversation, if the viewer is going, well, how do you convince the seller of that? Because that's what I get for a question. You're
Yes.
never convincing, you're solving real estate problems. So that the conversation might sound like this: Sharon didn't get the price that she wanted or didn't want to pay a commission, whatever the reason is. And Sharon might be in the middle of a job transfer and she has a date that's next week or next month. We can solve that real estate problem by putting this on a contract and band-aiding that financial burden as soon as I find my buyer. If she said to me instead, no, Chris, it doesn't matter if I get the full 50, I have to sell this to go buy my family a home. I need that 20, 30, 40, or 50 grand. We're not the buyer. And it's okay. I just tell them right up front, if you can wait, you'll do better. Can you wait or not? That's all. Simple conversation.
Because that does happen sometimes. They need the money to buy their next property.
Oh, yeah.
And if that is not your business model to give them any money, then that's not your business model. I did want to ask you this. Do you tell the buyer or the seller in a sandwich lease option that you are going to, what your plans are for that property? Or
yeah, 99% of them ask. Yeah. So we just say, look, this is a cool question you asked, because most of them love what we do for buyers. Believe it or not, we get some properties because of that. We just had an older woman in Michigan tell one of our students, I went with you because of what you do for buyers. And so, yes, they usually know what we're doing. They don't have a decision in it. We're going to accept who we accept because we're the experts. But they do say, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to live in the home? No, we're not going to live in your home. We help people that can't get a mortgage today that are very able and willing buyers. They just had a hiccup, a legitimate life hiccup, and we give them a chance.
That's a great way to put it, because how many times have you gotten a house because of what you plan to do with it? I'm sure a lot.
A lot.
If they ask you, are you going to live in the house? You say, no, but I'm going to help someone else. Then that is, they do love that. They love that you're in this business for more than just money.
They do, because you know what they say, Sharon, like a lot of our calls, of course, there's a lot of wholesales, big wholesales. I have friends that are in that business, in flippers, and they get called all the time by them. And so they always say, oh, I know you want to steal the property. And I say, no, I'll pay you full market price if I get my structure. Can we talk about it further? And they always are open to it. It's fun.
Yeah, that's great. Now, subject to is something that a lot of people have done, but equally a lot of people haven't done. So let's peel that one back a little bit. Subject to deals.
Yeah, because I'll preface it with this. I was a builder, then a realtor prior to the crash. And so I had a lot of years before I did creative. And although I knew of some of this, I didn't ever know about sub 2 or the details of it. So let's go to that same property, but let's change the numbers a little bit in that last example, because most sellers, in my experience, who are able and willing to transfer their property to and leave the loan in their name, are usually looking for financial relief like now. That's been my experience with very few exceptions. So let me give you a kind of a neat example, because I think these are all healthy relationships. Gentleman I called as a for sale by owner. And when I called him, he was nice enough to share with me, I'm trying to sell it on my own, but I'm trying to get custody of my grandson and I'm still in court. Long story short, he called me when the court was over and said, Chris, can you come do that thing where you buy my property? He had a small loan. It was a small house in my area, 130 grand was on the market, couldn't sell it, owed about 90, I think. Now, he knew very well at that time in that market that he probably would, if he had to pay a fee and then maybe negotiate, he was not going to get much out of it. He was willing to sign the property over to me, leave the note in his name with the bank and leave. He literally had his truck packed once he got custody. And I went out in one weekend and we did it. So why was he willing to do that? He was going cross country and he did not want the burden of the home. He trusted us. He looked into the Better Business Bureau and said, I don't mind the loans in my name. Just not pay it. You know, that's the promise you make, morally, ethically, and legally. So we pay the loan every month. About 4 or 5 years later, not even that, probably 3.5, the tenant buyer cashed us out of the home. They have a beautiful home. It's a historical home. They're in it now. They're happy. And the seller, who's cross country, got his loan paid off. No tie whatsoever now. And of course, we got our 3 paydays. Sub 2 is not a difficult thing. You just need to, in my opinion, find a local attorney in your marketplace, because thousands are done per month, that understands them. One that doesn't understand them will tell you you shouldn't do that, because they don't know how to instruct you to do them.
That's true. Now, for me, I kind of have a rule in my business. My attorney is an investor. And I tell people all the time, if you can find a real estate attorney that's also an investor,
I love it.
he can make anything happen, or she.
I love it.
They can They can make anything happen. So, and they understand all the creative things. When you get a hiccup in a closing, they can almost always solve the problem without ever leaving. I mean, literally in 15 minutes, they can take care of it.
Without chasing you down. I love it.
Really, they just come back in the room and go, okay, got that all fixed. Well,
Yep.
there was a problem. Well, there was, but got that fixed.
Love it.
So, and I love the fact that you're in a family business, because I've been in 2 family businesses, working with your children, or in my case, is my daughter. When you have entrepreneurial children, it's like the perfect mix of building a business.
I don't know. I mean, someone asked me this recently on a show about how it is. I said, I don't know what else I'd want to do every day. My wife said, you're so lucky. You know, my kids are 32 and 33 now. My son-in-law is 31, I think. Couple grandkids, they come by the office. I mean, that's a cool environment. If you ask me, it's healthy. And I don't know how I'd spend that much time with them. It's pretty neat.
I know, it's pretty cool. And the grandkids, I always said my granddaughter, she would always end up at my office because her mom had a real job. I had a business and I was the one with the sick child, but I could do it. And it was an honor to get to do it. But she had to go to closings and things too. That was the rule. She had to go be tortured with HUD-1 statements.
Yeah, but it won't be torture later because she learned it. That's awesome.
I know, I can already see it. She's 21 now. So she's, entrepreneurial nursing student that will probably have her own business. So
that's great. I love it.
It's funny watching the how she does it, you know, just sit back and know that I played a part in that.
Great energy.
So I did want to talk about, which you talked about earlier, about the changing market conditions. Nobody has a crystal ball. So once you've been through something like the crash of 2008, you're always aware of that. How can I be more protected and not go through what I went through last time? So let's talk about that a little bit. What can people do? And because you never know for sure what's going to happen.
Of course. Yeah. A couple of things come to mind because I went through it, to your point. One is when you're buying property now, we are screaming from the rooftops to our students, push the terms out as far as you can go. Ideally, at least 10 years. Why? I honestly don't care what the market does. My building I bought, Sharon, I'm remote now, as I told you before the show, but my building I bought that houses all of our companies and a few great tenants was bought on a 20-year note. Do I ever sit at night going, oh, I wonder if the market's going to change and my building? No, I don't think about that at all. I have 20 years. It's probably going to be 2 cycles by then, or 3. So number one, longest term as you can possibly structure with the seller. Number 2, don't bring on bank debt that you're signing personally on. I don't care what you have to do. If you don't know how to do it, find someone that can teach you, because you don't have to sign personally on bank debt and you won't worry as much about market fluctuations. Number 3, Sharon has a great attorney who's an investor, smart. We have several attorneys all around the country, but ours in our immediate area, 3 or 4, who over the years have kind of tweaked and adjusted our contracts to make sure we're protected. So there's never a contract that I'm in that I feel stuck in. Never. Not a sub-2, not a sandwich, none of our contracts. We can always pivot out if we have to. And guess what? No seller wants their property back. Therefore, you always have the leverage of negotiating longer and longer terms if you need to. So just be smart about that, and no pun intended, about how you construct the deals, who you hang out with, i.e. the attorney. And quite frankly, if you can align yourself with a community like Sharon or myself, or again, anyone that you align with, that's smart, because the plethora of information that comes through when you have multiple people out there is going to be a huge reduction in your learning curve, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a great piece of advice. Do you have any piece of advice you'd like to share with investors that are struggling now? We've all been there, kind of trying to crawl out of the hole, or things aren't going well. What do you say to those folks?
Well, okay, so creative real estate's been done since, I used to say 1800s, and then I read that new Vanderbilt book that what's his name wrote, Anderson Cooper. He wrote the Vanderbilt book about his family, and I picked it up just because the Vanderbilts have mansions, or did, in Newport, and I'm from Newport, Rhode Island. So I read it, and in there it talked about creative real estate being done in the 1600s before banks in New York City. So this isn't new, is my whole point. So find someone, if it's that niche or another niche, find someone that's in the niche, as I alluded to earlier, in a niche that you can get behind, that's having success and has had success through different market cycles. Critical, not just since the crash, critical that they've gone through personal and economic cycles. Secondly, once you find them, make sure that you put the blinders on for 3 years. Now, where did I pick that number? It's not that it's going to take you 3 years to do a deal, as you know, Sharon, but it is to say that if you say to me, you look me now and you say, I'm committed to this for 3 years. I'm not dipping my toe in. I'm not going to see if this works for a week. This takes time. If you dip your toe in, if you commit to 3 years and a bump comes, a speed bump, a twist in the market, because it's going to, it's inevitable. I know you'll stay with it because you told me you're going to commit for 3 years and you gave me your why. So those are the two biggest pieces of advice I can give you in any market.
Yeah, and that's great advice. So you want to take just a minute? You know, Chris has got a great podcast that you should listen to, The Smart Real Estate Coach. He's also got a coaching program. So take just a second and tell people about your coaching program.
Yeah, a couple of things, and I'll give you some free resources. We actually created a link for your tribe to get one of our books and not pay 10 cents. So our programs range from group coaching all the way through to interacting with us literally daily on the phone, helping you do deals. It just depends on how aggressive you want to be. Excuse me. And then we have a core product that can all be done online. It's called the Wicked Smart Academy. And so that's how everyone starts. And then you decide after that, I want to go faster. I want to go slower. I want help. I don't want help. And it's all okay. What I would encourage you to do first is we have the luxury of the internet. So on YouTube, we have about 150 now, it might be more, deals that we just expose, the good, the bad, and otherwise. Like, we just show you what happened. This was good. This was a challenge. We messed up here. And we outline the 3 paydays. If you like what you see there, we're going to ship you all the listeners, a book. It's the Real Estate on Your Terms best-selling book that Sharon mentioned. And I'll give you the link. It's just wickedsmartbooks.com/let's talk. So wickedsmartbooks.com/let's talk. And it's not going to say put in your credit card for shipping. This is totally free. We will pay for the shipping. You'll get a nice package out. And that'll let you know if you want to dig further, and that's up to you. I'd love to chat with you if you do.
And thank you, by the way, for the books. I sent you a little video. Don't know if you got it because you've got some people working with you, but I did appreciate those. I've got those books. And folks, this guy's the real deal. So don't hesitate to reach out. Go over to his website. I've got all the links here, which I'll include in the show. Check out all the things that he has for you. And his books are good. So take him up on this. When did you get an offer for an actual free book with no shipping, as he said? So Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show today. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you? And I'll put all these links in the show notes.
I appreciate it. They can just go to smartrealestatecoach.com and there's a contact button in there. And any of those free things I told you, they could just message as well. If they don't mind listening to me with the New England accent for another hour, there's a free class. It's just smartrealestatecoach.com/masters class. It's free.
Okay, sounds phenomenal. Thanks again, Chris. And thanks to all the listeners for coming out today. I know you love this show, so please share it and leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. I would really appreciate it. And I will see you all same time, same place next week. Bye for now.